I sold Comet Cyclones.
Oh, okay.
I sold more Camaros and Chevelles probably than anybody in this area.
Z28 Camaros.
Z28s,
Coco Camaros.
I had them all.
We're here at a buddy of mine's house named Terry Mummert. He sold high-performance muscle cars all through the 60s and the 70s. And what I thought we'd do is take you guys along with us and see what we can learn together. I was told that basically if someone wanted like a Boss 429 or a Shelby Mustang back in the day, that around here you were the guy to see. Is that true?
I always felt I was. I mean, I specialized in performance cars.
Okay.
Convertibles, custom vans, four-wheel drive, pickup trucks, ahead of my time, so to speak.
Oh, wow.
And I've dealt in very few transportation cars.
Okay.
If I had one on my lot, it was a trade-in on a performance car.
How did you get started in selling cars as far as being like a high-performance muscle car dealer?
My father had a Mercury agency, and he wanted to get out of the car business, and the opportunity came along for him to do it in 1963.
You have a picture over here of your father?
That's the Chrysler Plymouth dealership. This is my dad in 1955 at the Atlantic City New Car Showing. He's walking the boardwalk, and this is the other salesman at the Chrysler garage. And Parker's grandfather saw this picture, and he said, "Terry, I got the same picture." He said, "I'm going to give you a copy." And this is Parker's granddad back there.
Look at him.
In 1955 on the boardwalk of Atlantic City.
Now, the way that I'm under the assumption of things were back in the day is you were the high performance guy, and then my grandfather was like just the pedestrian.
He was a used car dealer.
Right. He sold like Falcons, like stuff, station wagons,
yes,
things that you would
Ramblers and
yes,
all that.
Okay.
If you needed a car to drive to work, he was your guy.
Okay.
If you needed one to beat everybody in town, I'm your guy. I sold Comet Cyclones.
Oh, okay.
I sold more Camaros and Chevelles probably than anybody in this area.
Z28 Camaros.
Z28s, I had them all.
You had them all.
I never had a Yanko.
Never had a Yanko.
I've tried to buy a couple, but they were overpriced for my lot in Waynesboro.
How did you get these cars?
I just drove all over the country to the top dealers in the area. I bought cars out of California, but I had them shipped in.
Okay.
The high performance thing, they were writing hit songs about them when I was fooling with them.
Okay.
She's real fine, my 409.
Gotcha.
Okay.
What is that?
Hey, little Cobra, don't you? You know? So I wasn't a genius. I was just going with the flow of younger people.
It was just the time.
It was just the times.
Okay.
But I was good at it for one reason. I knew all the dealers. They all knew my dad that I dealt with, all the way to Frederick, Westminster, Bedford, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. That's about as far out as we went.
Okay.
If I got light, I'd go further, but I didn't have to. I always could do them. Most dealers would come in with a solid lifter Camaro, lifters rattling because nobody adjusted the valves. Oh, what's this thing? This thing's junk. Dealers weren't stupid, but they weren't as smart as they thought they were.
Okay.
They'd put it on the back row with the auction hog. I'd come in, "Hey, what do you have to have for that old Camaro?" "Well, if you take a couple, I'll practically give it to you," you know, stuff like that. So that's what I wanted, and I bought a couple other ones to fill in.
Okay.
Auction cars.
If I find a Shelby or anything like that in this area,
I sold
the
it.
history comes back to you.
Almost all of them in Greencastle, that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't want to give any of that information away
No,
on
you can't
camera or
do it.
anything
No.
like that. But we live in an area where there are a lot of heavy hitter cars.
Well, I'm not bragging, but I started that. I mean, it's a crazy world.
And here are some of the cars that...
That's two small block Cobras, a brand new GT350 at Mason-Dixon. I won my class that day.
Here, let's set that down here and kind of go over each car. So,
Okay.
so what car is this?
That's an early 63 Cobra, 289. This is a 64 Cobra. They call them fives, but it's like brand new, low mileage. I sold that car for $4,100 in 1968.
And how would you have acquired these Cobras?
I bought them out of race car magazines.
Really?
That sold cars like the Auto Locator, but it was race cars.
I did not know. Okay.
And sports cars.
Yeah, no, I've bought cars out of magazines like that also. Well,
Yeah.
not now, a few years back.
A few years back, yeah.
Right,
And I
so-
had all these dealers, if they'd see something like this or somebody would bring one in, they didn't want it, they'd call me and they'd give the customer my number. So that's another way I got them.
Okay. And it even says here how much you paid for the car.
Yeah, paid $3,100 for it, made $1,000. In that era, you didn't make $1,000 on a used car.
Okay.
You're lucky to make $600. That was a big hit.
Gotcha.
So my dad and I celebrated that evening going out to our favorite restaurant for a steak, and really happy that we sold this car for $1,000 profit.
Oh, for sure.
A couple years ago, I got a phone call from a guy that just bought it off the guy I sold it to.
Okay.
And I said, I'm not ignorant enough to ask you what you paid.
It was a lot, I know that.
But he said, well, let me tell you, I financed my farm, if that'll tell you anything. And through the grapevine, I ran into a guy and he paid $600,000 for it.
Yeah, they probably go from, it depends if it's a big block or a small block car,
Yeah.
but anywhere from 800 to $1 million.
Yeah, that's right around there.
And then these are some of the
That's
65
this was a brand new GT350
Okay.
that I was selling on the lot. And we race prepared it. We done the suspension and the tune-up, and I won my class.
Now let me ask you, did you guys, I'm really big into like VIN codes and like correct stuff being on the car. Did you, when you were buying and selling these, know that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you knew which wheels were correct, which weren't correct.
If
whether-
something wasn't right, I brought it back.
You brought it
See
back.
these wheels?
Yep. Okay.
That's a common steel wheel. No hubcap from the factory or anything. That's what they had, and the reason for it, they ran out of the Shelby wheels.
Really?
Yeah. So they just put these on. They're more rare than probably any aluminum wheel.
If people even know that.
And see, this has the original wheels.
Yeah, I see that one.
This
down
is
there.
a 65 leftover converted to a 66. It had the inboard traction bars and all that.
And how many Shelbys would you say that you've sold over your lifetime?
It wasn't a great amount.
100?
No, it wouldn't have been that much.
50?
Probably 50.
50?
But
Interesting.
that's back when Francis Ford was having trouble selling 5 a month. I mean, they weren't that good of a seller, believe it or not,
Okay.
because they were like 600 more than a Chevelle with a bigger motor.
And did you ever, so your dad had a dealership, and then you had started your own basically kind of lot.
When he sold the Mercury dealership, he was left with 16 cars.
Got you. Okay.
And if he wouldn't have formed a used car lot, he'd have had to pay sales tax or take the cars to the auction. And he had nothing but low mileage, one owner cars. You don't take them to the auction and make anything. So he got the license where he was going to open up his full-time insurance and real estate. The lot was big enough, and I operated there for 37 years.
And then you kind of went into the high performance stuff.
Immediately.
How did the part where you started working as a dealer for Shelby, how did that evolve? Or
And
talk to me about that.
I wanted a Cobra.
Okay.
This was early in like 65. And they advertised one in the Harrisburg paper, Francis for Ford. I called them, yeah, we still have it. I said, well, I'm going to leave. And they didn't know me at the time. And they said, well, we have to have a certified check. I called the banker that I dealt with. He was the vice president. He went into the bank and got me a certified check and rode along with me.
Okay.
That's how tight we used to be in the.
It's not like that now. No.
No. But anyhow, we got there, and just as I got to the dealership, the Cobra drove by.
Oh, no.
Thought, oh, now where are they going? I pulled in. First time I ever met him, become real good friends, and then evolved into working with him. Roger Kukovich. And he said, are you Terry? I said, yeah. He said, I got bad news. He said, there was already a deposit on that car, and we had to take it down and put it inside. But he said, if the deposit falls through, it's your car.
Okay.
And he said, we'll deliver it to you. I said, you don't have to do that. But the guy took it. Roger said, I got a car down here I want you to drive. I went down as a full comp R model, 65 Shelby.
Really?
And he said, just drive this.
One of what, 20 or something
Yeah.
that they made?
So I left the dealership with Roger, just had 2 seats and seat belts, and no back seat or anything at the time, the comp cars. And I drove it up the road and back. He said, get in on it. And I mean, it was lethal. I mean, really. I mean, it was 350 horse.
Yeah.
And
I mean, those are the most expensive Shelbys other than Cobras.
that's the
right
most
now.
expensive
Yeah.
one. We went back down the dealership, and he said, Terry, he said, a GT 350, he said, if you have this interest, he said, why don't you buy one of them and drive it till we can find you a Cobra, or you find one or whatever. And he said, I'll cut you a break on it where you can make a couple dollars. So that's when I bought this one.
That's when, okay.
It's blue with white stripes. And the guy that bought it traded in a 65 GTO,
Interesting.
okay? And we become real good friends.
So that's when your dealership kind of started then, was like the mid 60s?
64.
64. What are some of the other cars that you've sold? You said you've had Boss 429s, and
Yeah.
you've probably got to drive all of them, being that it was on your lot, right?
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about, what was the better driving car back in the day? What would you have, if you were to go to lunch, what car were you taking?
Well, I would take a Cobra if I had them. See, there's some of the Cobras. That's my 427. And I didn't have a real good camera, but I got a picture of it after I sold it.
Okay. Cool.
So that's, why it's not a good picture.
My dad told me if someone wanted thrush pipes or something like that for their
I
car,
was
you were the guy to go see.
I had a speed shop,
Right.
and we sold tons of Chevy stuff, but I specialized in Ford.
Okay.
I mean, you weren't looked down on when you come in and asked for a 289 valve cover. So you were asking about my favorite of all?
Ooh.
That is my favorite of all that I sold. It is a 68.5 Cobra Jet Cougar. Now the Mustangs are rare. That's even more rare. And here's a picture of the guy I sold it to winning his class down at Mason-Dixon with the car.
And what makes that your favorite? That's what Mason-Dixon looked like back in the day?
Oh, a Cougar was
wow.
like a... I liked the Cougars as a regular car.
They were just more comfortable?
They were more comfortable. They were a different look. See how good that looks? I mean, that is just awesome.
It's not very often you find, someone that's into Cougars like that.
Well, I know, but I'm only into a Cobra Jet Cougar. I mean, nothing else. And I want to tell you something. I'll tell you a real quick story. A friend of mine, he still owns this car right here. He traded in on this 64 Cyclone I sold him way back in the day.
Okay.
Now he has purchased this car back, and he still owns it, and it's his pride and joy.
Now, comments are something that not a lot of people talk about. My uncle's very into comments. I know a little bit about them. I believe they won the Nationals in 64.
They won everything in 64.
Yeah.
This is Ronnie Sox coming up the line with the 426 Comet and 427 Comet, all that. And see, people love their announcers.
Won in 64. Yeah.
Nicholson beat him more than he won,
Okay.
but he also had a Comet.
Gotcha.
So Comets...
He had the Ugly Duckling, which was a Comet.
Station
it was
wagon.
a station wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got his ass kicked by Sox. And he went down to the hardtop. They work better. But, excuse my French.
Oh, you're fine.
That was a brand new Eliminator Boss 302. I ordered it new.
Interesting.
Cougar. And what a disappointment that was.
I was always told that Shelbys and Boss Mustangs were kind of like dogs to drive. They just didn't really start up that fast. They didn't get off the line that fast. Is that
Shelby
true?
wasn't. A Shelby was the fastest car 0 to 60
Gotcha.
in the muscle car world.
Cobra?
Cobra was the fastest.
Okay.
Even today, I mean, them supercars, every once in a while, $1 million car will beat a Cobra that sold for $4,600.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's rare. So the best car off the line for the money was a 65 289 high performance Mustang.
Interesting.
Red light to red light, they were unbeatable.
Shelby or K-Code or just
K-Code.
K-Code? I had a K. Okay.
And they had to be tuned properly. This was a Hershey hill climbing champion. I bought it. You can see the roll bar still in it. That's a GT 350 without the stripes. I repainted the car. There it is getting painted. It was that.
What are some of the cars that you regret selling? Or do you not have any regrets selling any of them? Or is there one that you have in here that if you had, other than the car behind me here that you're proud of, what would be some of the ones that you wish that you just never let go away?
There's only one.
There's only one. Okay. This car right
That's
here.
the car I have in a 16. It's a 2.4 stick, motor built by Gunther Brothers, very famous from Harrisburg.
And it looks like it has
Corvette grill,
Yeah, okay.
lowered. It's mild custom. It has a Paradise plastic custom top on it. It's not like a T-Bird top at all.
And that was one you had when you were 16, and
Yeah,
that's
well,
why
I was almost 17 when I
almost
got
17.
it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I started with a 50 Ford, and I worked my way up to getting this.
Interesting. And that
Working for my father in the
so
car
through
business.
all the muscle cars you've had,
That's
the
my favorite one.
Is that your lot?
That's my lot. That's the only picture I have of a Boss. That's a Boss 429 on the corner there. And you can't see them real good, but we added up all the cars that I had sitting on this lot at that time. They're over $1 million now.
Interesting.
Because I had number 55 Shelby sitting back there. You know.
They were just cars back then.
Yeah.
They were just cars.
This is a high performance 63 Fairlane 289. That's a rare car, believe it or not.
Did you ever sell any Thunderbolts? Or anything?
I missed a Thunderbolt by an hour. It's still in our area.
Yeah. There's two of them around.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just,
There's Old Reliable. That's
that's
car.
the old reliable, and that's my collection. I was showing it to the owner of the car at Carlisle, and I took a picture of the collection with the car.
Now, talk to me a little bit about Carlisle. So Carlisle started in 1974.
I don't want to sound bragging, but I don't know of anybody who sold more cars there than I did
Interesting. Okay.
in the heyday. Now, I might be overtaken now because I haven't had any there hardly at all.
Your spots were right on the corner, right
On the corner.
right where the car corral was.
You walk in,
Yep.
you go one way is car parts, and the other way is car corral.
Yep.
And it wasn't always like that. When I first got those spaces, there was no back gate.
Interesting. Okay.
But when the back gate opened, I always sold everything I took. So there wasn't no problem with the back gate. But when the back gate opened, it was easier. I got the guy first, you know.
Interesting. Well, when I was a kid, been going there for the last 20 years, that's where I've learned a lot of stuff, because you would go there and you would see Hemi Cudas, you would see Shelby
Everything.
Mustangs that just got pulled out of the barn, you would see a Cobra that literally no one has saw for the last 50 years, and it's like, it's they sometimes have stuff like that there, but it's getting fewer and fewer and fewer.
Fewer. Now, I can explain Carlisle real quickly. The third year they were open, I took a 57 Plymouth Belvedere. Looks like Christine wasn't out yet, but it looked like Christine, red. The car corral was on the old racetrack. And I pulled in the back gate after I got my sticker. And I looked up in the mirror. The 57 Plymouth has a mirror on the dash. I looked up in the mirror, and there was like 3 people running behind me with their fingers like this. I thought, what's he want? So I pulled over, and he come up, first chance. He said, I'll follow you. And the other guy said, second chance. I pulled up and backed in my space, and he come up and he said, do you mind if I sat in it? I said, no, help yourself. So he got out and he said, can you show me the motor? I said, yeah. And he said, what are you asking for it? And I didn't have no sign made up yet. And I thought, well, maybe I was a little light, so I asked a little more than what I thought I was. Okay, we'll take it. Can we do the paperwork right now?
Oh, wow.
I said, yeah. I said, I don't know where to do the paperwork right. He said, it's right up here. He said, I'll show you. So we went up, done the paperwork. He paid me cash. I'd say not more than 45 minutes, I was done. From that time on, the next year, I was ready, buddy. I had like 5 cars ready to go up.
Well, there was no internet back then either,
No.
you know, so if you wanted one and you saw it there, that was like the only chance you had to probably
Right.
buy it. Tell me a little bit about the speed shop, what that was like kind of day to day.
I was getting into racing, and I went to the local speed shops, and this is unbelievable. They actually, like you, must have had leprosy or something when you asked for a Ford part. And I thought, what the hell's wrong with people? And that's the truth. They didn't even have valve cover gaskets in stock. I told Dad, I said, I think I'm going to go into parts business, sideline. Make a long story short, I went down to the #1 warehouse on the East Coast, and he set me up. Then I got set up with Keystone Automotive. They became the biggest, and the rest is history. Keystone Automotive said, what's your goal? I said, well, I'd like to maybe sell $500 worth of stuff a week. And he said, well, that's good. But he said, I want to tell you something. After I got to know you, senior shop here. He said, $500 an hour might be closer, what you're going to do when you open the front door. I said, seriously? He said, I'm serious. And it boomed. I mean, I was doing $1,700 a day back in the day.
What was some of the highest selling stuff, some of the stuff that like you remember just going through a bunch? Like what did...
Well, I sold Gurney Westlake cylinder heads.
Gotcha, okay. So
And
cylinder heads.
they were like $5,000 when a normal head was $500.
Gotcha.
And I sold Algon fuel injection, and the whole unit would be like a $5,000, $6,000. Big money back then. But the average part that I sold was just for the guy on the street, so an intake maybe for 100 and a quarter, Holly carburetor $59.95 for a 600, hundreds and hundreds, air shocks, side pipes, headers. That's what I mainly sold.
One-stop shop. They could
Yeah.
get the parts, or they could get the car from you.
Right.
Interesting.
But when somebody walked in my front door, my inventory, I had the same amount of stuff for Ford, Chevy, Mopar, and AMC.
Really?
If you had an AMC, I had gaskets there.
Okay.
You know, and nobody had to be ashamed of what they drove.
What sold the most?
Well, because I specialized in Ford, it was
Probably.
a toss between Chevy and Ford.
74. Okay.
You'd fall out of bed and sell Chevy stuff, you know, because they needed more stuff.
Well, Chevy was the interchange king. I mean,
Yeah.
you could put parts on other cars.
Nothing
other
fit
parts.
right, but it would fit on anything.
Well, that's not totally untrue.
No, that's true.
That is true.
This car is a legend in this part of the country.
Gotcha.
I took my first ride in it when I was 11 years old. It was a repossession at the Frederick Motor Company, and the guy bought it with the intentions of drag racing. It's a Phase 2, 2.4s, and he immediately painted the car blue, and he never made a payment on it for almost a year. He had one full drag racing season, and they were looking for the car, could not find it. They were looking for a white one, and he was clever enough to paint it blue. The outcome of that was a little unusual. Whenever my dad bought it, it's a repossession,
Okay.
he brought it home, and he knew of a person who wanted one of these and could not find one in 57.
So when you say it's got the 2.4s on it, obviously, what code would this?
This is an E code,
This is an E code, and
but
this
the
is
E had two versions.
Gotcha.
Phase 1, Phase 2.
okay.
There's 9 of these were made by the factory, but they offered the Phase 2 kit as a dealer installed package. Camshaft, higher compression with steel shim gaskets and so on.
And this is a 57.
7. This car has overdrive,
Okay.
which most of these E's, believe it or not, were performance-minded people buying them, but they weren't hot rodders, and they ordered automatics. The second owner was also a drag racer, and he drag raced this from 1958 to 1960. He drove this car and raced it. And the story is, I just found this out about 6 months ago. He told me the story. Terry said, I can win. This car has like 25 wins over that period of time. Sanctioned races. That's not on the street, probably 100 on the street. He told me the story. I could always win if it wouldn't be for the one trailered Corvette that come into York off and on. He said I couldn't beat him. Just a couple months ago, I ran into the guy that is the guru York US 30 historian. And we got talking about Rock and Don Rice, 57 Ford I had with a supercharger pictures. I asked him a question. I said, well, do you remember Rich Rock? He said, no, not really. He said,
And that's the guy who owned this car.
that's owned it.
Rich Rock.
Rich Rock.
Okay.
Waynesboro. Had a meat cutting business at the edge of town. And he was asking more questions about the car. And I told him about he could win except for a trailered Corvette that came in. He said, Terry, he said, do you know who that was? I said, no. He said it was M&R Smith, Old Reliable. They didn't have Old Reliable then on the car, but it was a trailered competition car built by Jenkins. This car, main competitor was M&R Smith. That's a legend in drag racing.
Oh, yeah.
More history came into the car, and I tried to buy the car for years and years, couldn't find it. It disappeared. And here a friend of mine bought it and never told anybody. He passed away and his son called me, said, can you help me get my dad's old Thunderbird running? I went up and there it was, Rich Rock's car.
Was it blue when you found it, or was it
No,
white?
here's what the story is.
Okay.
His father, it was some damage on the front fender. So he parked it for years, never done anything. And the 2 4s were missing. He sold that off the guy to get money. A lot of stuff I had to redo. He painted it by the code. I never knew it was a white car all them years that we've owned it. Okay. Rock had it.
Gotcha.
So it was blue and red. That's a bad omen in America. People don't like blue and red. Foreign countries, Austin Healey's, MGs, all your high-end Jaguars, blue with red interior is what people want. Over here, it didn't go.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyhow, Rich was going to sell this car. Nobody would buy. I don't like that blue. I don't like that with that red interior. So he took it to the #1 paint shop in the area, and they put a black paint job on this that rivals stuff today. Sold it right away to a friend of mine who owned Western Auto, black and red. When it was wrecked, it was black. When Bob redone the car, he went by the code. And the guy that stripped it said, I went through black, I went through blue, and I went through white to get to the bare metal. It was painted blue to hide it from the repo guy.
And this is probably the most proud of car you've ever owned?
Ever owned. 2 reasons. My father, this was the best car ever sold at Antrim Way Motors.
Gotcha, okay.
Nothing comes close to the Rarity or anything.
1 of 9.
And I wanted a car that Dad sold at the used car lot.
Gotcha, okay.
And here I got the best one he ever sold.
So tell me a little bit about this car raced against a Corvette.
M&R Smith.
M&R Smith, okay.
Here's a collection of M&R Smith memorabilia.
Gotcha.
This is M&R Smith, and it's referred to as the Old Reliable. The 62 Chevy that they raced had Old Reliable on the side of the car.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Chevy. I just never heard of the Corvette. That was
right. Well, the Corvette wasn't even promoted. This guy, the historian, said that he just knew who owned the car.
Okay.
And why it was always fast, because it was part of the M&R Smith upcoming.
Gotcha.
M&R Smith won the first car race at the York Fairground.
Oh.
And guess who was driving?
No idea.
Lewis Chevrolet.
Really?
Lewis Chevrolet came down to M&R Smith. M&R was the first Chevy dealer in the United States. They won the first race at the fairground. That trophy is kept in a vault in York.
Okay.
I mean, it's priceless almost.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. So that's the connection between this car
and you and
history of this car. Beating everybody in this part of the country on the road, I don't even talk about it.
Gotcha.
But he did.
What are some of the things that you've collected? I know that some of the stuff is local here. This one looks like it's
This
local.
is all Wayne's Bar with the exception of a Greencastle.
Okay, gotcha.
And this, when you look at it, don't look like much, but this is 30 years trying to gather up this stuff.
Right. No, I see that. You got the pens and everything.
Pens with everybody's name on and everything.
And then these are local.
This is just not all local.
Okay.
This was an accidental collection. I would trade a car in, and I would take these off, and I'd just keep them. But this one is your grandfather, and he gave me that. These are all metal, and back in the early 50s, they went to a sticky one. These, you had 2 screw holes. These were to hide the screw holes and get some advertising of your lot, not the other guy.
Gotcha.
My hubcaps, I sold almost all of them to that guy, but these are the ones I kept, had special meaning. The top row was the caps I had on my 57 Ford, my second car.
So these ones right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd buy them out of Bob Thomas S.O. He was a performance dealer at the time.
Gotcha.
And a 3-bar was $21 and the 4-bar was $28. These, your uncle would know about these. These are Cyclones.
I was going to say, those are Comet Cyclones.
Yeah,
those are expensive.
They're hard to find.
Very hard to find.
That's one of the most successful drag cars in history.
Okay.
64 Comet factory experimental. That was the very first run put on a Comet AFX car.
Okay.
Pictures of the very first run. What Wins on Sunday, sells on Monday. They took them cars to England, and the English went nuts over them.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Ronnie Sox, his car was all white, and when they took it to England, they painted it red, white, and blue. And that's where the Ronnie Sox colors comes from.
I did not know that.
It was such a great success, he kept it the whole way till he died.
You're right, because his 63 Z11 Impala was white and it had the checkered flags on the side.
Right.
And so I didn't, okay, so that's where the white, red, and blue paint
Yeah.
job came from. Interesting. Okay. Terry, thank you so much.
Hope you enjoy it.
I appreciate your time. And
I'm a talker.
yeah, if you guys like this kind of content, just give us a like or subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more of Terry, maybe we'll have him back here in the future. Again, my name is Parker with Backyard Barn Finds, and Terry, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great day.